You're listening to the Illinois District Men's Ministries.
If you're here this morning, this session is on stress cracks in the foundation, working off of our rock solid theme. Stress cracks in the foundation, and I've kind of subtitled this, A Better Way Than Busy. You're here because you're busy. We advertise this session as being for busyness, stress, and anxiety, and I know that is a thing for many, many of our men. I don't find very many people at all who say, I'm just looking for things to fill my calendar with. I really have a lot of free time, and I'm just kind of bored all the time. And no, we live in a very hectic, very fast-paced society, and so this is a big, big thing. And we want to be able to address it, want to be able to look at some scriptural principles for it. And I believe that busyness does not have to be just a given and a way of life. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. I am at war, I feel like, with busyness, with stress and anxiety. I feel like I was kind of hostage to it for several years and began to defend against it a few years ago. I've made a whole lot of progress, but I feel like I've still got a whole long way to go as well. And so I really have gone on the offensive, and I'm now trying to bring that fight to men everywhere that I can and be able to teach and point out and push to a different way that I don't believe God designed us to continually be stressed out, worked up, frustrated, overwhelmed because of all of the things that we have to do. I just don't believe that that's God's design for us, and many of us have found ourselves in that situation, but I want to talk today and suggest to you that there is a better way than that, and that it is accessible. So the kind of too long didn't read version of today is this: Jesus has a better way than stress-filled busyness trap that we've created for ourselves. This session is going to lay out the first few steps toward a life that accomplishes more meaningful work while being less anxious and frantic. Now, I will assure you, I will not fix everything in 1 hour. There is no doubt about that. But I want to just kind of point you toward the way and maybe point you toward a step or two that you can take that starts you down that path. Nearly every man is busy. There's always more work to do, more things to fix, more places you're supposed to be, more people that need you. So trying to check off all of those boxes can easily lead to what some have come to call the hustle fallacy. The hustle fallacy suggests that you have to work harder and longer if you are going to accomplish more. And while that might seem true and seem just kind of like a math equation, if I want more to get done, I've got to work longer, I've got to work harder, I've got to invest more time, I've got to hustle more. While that might seem like a truth on its surface, the beauty of the hustle fallacy really is that it's just that. It's a fallacy. It's not true. And indeed, I believe there is a better way. I'm really concerned about the stress and the anxiety that weighs on you as a man, in large part because of the busyness that is in your life. There's plenty of you here that I don't know, but there are plenty of you that I do know, and I can know right off some of the different hats that you wear, some of the different things that you're involved in, all the different things you have going on as you're trying to be the best husband and father you can be, while also trying to work outside the home and provide for the family. Many of you are in ministry of one kind of or another, whether you're pastoring, whether you're helping lead a group at church, or any of these kinds of things, and it can easily pile upon us. While I'm really concerned about the stress, the anxiety that comes with this, in this session, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time telling you about the toll that it's taken on your physical body, but it is. I'm not going to take a whole lot of time telling you about the toll that it takes on your mental health, but it does. And I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about how it makes you a pain to be around sometimes. Now, all of those things that I just said are true, but you are a man, and so it's unlikely that you would listen to that kind of reason anyway. In fact, your wife has probably already told you that if you're married. And if you don't agree with that statement, it's almost certain that you were not listening when your wife told you that. So I won't harp on the fact that the stress and the anxiety and the busy, the crazy world that you created is killing you, but instead, I'm going to take a different path today, and I'm going to tell you there's a better way. All right, I'm not going to try to tell you that, hey, look at your physical body, look at the mental health, look at this and look at that. Maybe kind of sort of you ought to make a change. I'm going to tell you, how about there's a better way? All right? If you're using a handsaw, and I can come along and say, have you considered this battery-powered skilled saw? You can make a cleaner cut, a lot less time, get more done. There's not many of us that would say, nah, I'd just rather do it the old way. I'd just rather do it the slow way. I'd just rather do it the tedious way. And that's what I want to suggest to you in this topic, is that while this is problematic for us, forget all of that. There's a better way to get it done than what we have been doing. I'm going to suggest to you there's a better, more efficient way to accomplish important things than being busy, that there really is a better way than busy. I wonder if you're like me in this way. For the longest time, I believed that the lack of busyness was a luxury that some have but was not available for me. My thinking was kind of like, yeah, sure, others can and perhaps should stop and smell the roses, so to speak. Days off and vacation time was important for the people in my congregation, and I told them so. My wife and kids needed and deserved time off for fun, but not me, because, well, I have a calling on my life. There's a church to care for. Someone around here has to go to work with all the groceries that my kids eat. The projects around the house aren't going to fix themselves, and I'm the one to do it. My team at work can't function without my input, or health and wellness, or neat for others, but I just don't have time for that because I'm on a crusade. In short, to be honest, I came to believe that I was so important, that I have so many responsibilities, that so many people depend upon me, that I must be resigned to a chaotic, busy, stressful life that I told myself few other people can understand. I suspect I'm not the only one that has played some version of that story in my mind. I suspect that I am not the only man that has told himself very similar kind of things. And it's easy to think that's true for somebody else. They ought to take time to rest. That's true for somebody else. They ought to do it in a different way. They ought to be able to do these things. But for me, I've got too much. I've got to do it like this. I've got to keep going and going and going. 40 hours is a good, solid, full-time job for somebody else. But I have such important things to do that it needs to go 50 or 60 or 70 hours. And some of you are in that boat. I just felt like it was my cross to bear. But it leads me into a story about the one who really did bear a cross. I want to point you toward the scriptures. We're not going to read particular scriptures in this morning, but I imagine it will resonate with you. I want to talk to you about something from the Bible that really, really bothers me. Now, I'm an ordained minister, and this is being recorded, so I'll tread carefully on what in the Bible really bothers me. It's the story of Jesus in the Gospels, right? So I love the miracles Jesus performs. Christ giving up his life on the cross and resurrecting a new life just a few days later. It's both the ultimate sacrifice and the ultimate power play. That is amazing. But if I'm really, really honest, I take issue with Jesus. And specifically, I take issue with how Jesus manages his time. It bothers me, like a lot. That might sound crazy or sacrilegious, but listen to this. Hear me out. So Jesus' stated mission in the Gospels is to seek and to save those who are lost, right? That's why he came. Jesus is here to seek and save those who are lost. Jesus lived upon this earth for how many years? 33. Jesus started his earthly ministry at what age, we believe? 30. Hold on. We, as well as anybody, know that Jesus is absolutely God. right? Things don't surprise him. It's not like Jesus thought he had 50 years. And who would have thought they killed him earlier than he? No, Jesus understood. 33 years he's on this earth. Public ministry starts when he's 30 years old. Christ comes to earth for a very important and very specific job. He's got a little more than 3 decades in which to get it done. And the ultimate plan from God, you're telling me, is to spend the first 90% of that time under the radar? Who does that? That's as if you were given a full year to accomplish the most important task of your life. On January 1, it's put in front of you and says, you have 365 days, go. And long about Thanksgiving, you decide to get started good. Now, that may be the MO for the typical college student who has a term paper. But can I tell you, I'm quite surprised when I find it in the Savior of the world. The first 90%. I love preparation for a job as much, perhaps more than most. But 90%, it gets worse. During Jesus' 3 years or so of ministry, I read multiple times where he got away from it all for a day or two. He talks quite a bit about rest. Never seems to be in a hurry. It's almost the opposite. He misses his friend's funeral by a couple of days, not because he was so busy doing 14 other things, but simply because he chose to wait. This is reality. Go back and read through the Gospels with that mindset of how does Jesus use his time, and you will see it again and again. Rarely can you find a place where it seems like Jesus is hustling and hurrying. It seems like Jesus is almost meandering and being interrupted and stopping and resting and setting aside for a little bit. It bothers me. It doesn't make sense to me. If you were elected to be the Savior of the world, and you were given 33 years to live, what would you do? How many years do you think you'd spend in ministry? How many hours a day would you work? At what pace would you be traveling from place to place? I guarantee I would be doing my best to get 50 years of work into that 33 years of life. I know how I operate. We're talking about the Savior of the world. It's impossible to put a price tag on his time. Like, how would you value an hour of that 33 years? It's nearly immeasurable. I'd be hurrying to start by the time I was 10 years old. Hey, let's run 16-hour days. Right? There will be time to rest when I am back to heaven. Vacation's non-existent. We have a world to save here. I would wake up early. I would go to bed late. I would be hurrying from place to place at breakneck speed. I'd have one or more of my disciples tasked with prioritizing needs and people so I could make the greatest impact. I'd have another disciple in charge of meal planning so that I could get nutrition as fast as possible and get back after it. And this would be a finely tuned machine of efficiency because I'm here to seek and save that which is lost. And the more I can seek and the more I can save seems like the bigger. That's how I would do it. By the time they put me on that cross, I'd nearly be worked to death anyway, I think. It just doesn't make sense. I've wrestled with it a lot. I'm going to give you a great theological truth right here. God is not stupid. These are the kind of sentences I got a 4-year Bible college degree to be able to deliver. God isn't stupid. As much as it pains me way down in my soul, I can really only draw one logical conclusion here. If Jesus Christ was the perfect Savior, and if he accomplished everything that he wanted without a frantic hurry, and he did, then evidently being busy is not the best way to get things done. That is written in bold in your book, and if you want to circle that and put stars around it and highlight it and see if you can get it to rub onto your forehead so that when you look at it in the mirror, being busy is not the, Jesus showed it. If it was, wouldn't he have used it? But he wasn't. Being busy evidently is not the best way to get things done. Now, it seems counterintuitive to the point of being crazy. And quite honestly, I'm still in the middle of trying to learn it. There are days that it seems like it cannot be true. But more and more for me, the light is beginning to shine through that not only is busy not healthy and not sustainable long term, but the reality is evidently it's not even the best way to do what you want to do. There's a better way than busy. I've told you that I've given you the example. I pulled out my trump card and said, Jesus did it a different way. Hey, be like Jesus, right? Let me share with you a couple of maybe pragmatic reasons why it may be that busy is not the most efficient way. We'll spend a little bit of time with that. And then what I really want to do today is suggest to you some practical steps to put this into action, all right? So I'm going to make the claim that busy is not the most efficient way. And then again, I'm trying to throw down every ace card I have. You see in parentheses, how do you argue with this? Unless you think you're smarter than Jesus, right? So, but I want to suggest to you a few reasons why I think it makes sense that busy is not the most efficient way. The first is this: more time spent working may not be getting you more productivity. Now, that, again, just doesn't feel like it could be true on its surface, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of data that suggests it is, and then I suspect some of you are going to think that that doesn't apply to you because, well, you're a busy man. But nonetheless, let's give it a go. Working a large number of hours during the week can look really beneficial on the surface, but research shows that longer hours correlates with a lot of negative effects. The Stanford University did a study, and they found that once you get up past 49 hours in a given week, there becomes a decline in your productivity. In fact, they found that if you increase all the way up to 55 hours of work, working more than 55 hours in a week, according to their study, is essentially pointless. We might run the aisles this morning. Let's go. The study showed that if you worked 70 hours in a week, you would get essentially the same amount done as if you worked 55 hours in a week. That after so long, perhaps you slow down, you're not as engaged in the work, you're more distracted. Whatever the reasoning might be, Stanford University's study said that guys who worked 70 hours a week were getting the exact same amount done as guys who worked 55 hours a week. Somebody just got 15 hours stolen from them, didn't they? Sometimes more spent time working doesn't yield more productivity. And while we could argue about the precise numbers and what type of work you're doing and how that applies to you, and if you're a Superman who really is geared for 65 hours when others may not be, any of these things we could argue about. But the reality is there does come a point at which I am not gaining a lot more ground by doing a whole lot more work. If there was and it worked indefinitely, why would I sleep? I will take 24 hours awake and getting something done or being involved in my life. But every last one of us, while you might only need 6 hours of sleep or someone else needs 8, every one of us understand the reality is that we've got to have rest. We've got to have some sleep. And so this thought points to the stress and the overwhelm and the fatigue that comes with busyness. It's not just hurting your health, but it just isn't giving you the result that you want, which is to get more stuff done. Burnout is real. We need periods of rest and rejuvenation. How many of you own a battery-powered drill of some kind? All right. When you're using that drill and then all of a sudden you pull the trigger and there's nothing else there, do you throw that drill away because it's inept and it's no good? Sometimes. I can identify with that. I might get momentarily frustrated because I had a screw halfway driven when that gave out. But it just kind of makes sense, right? Depending on what drill you have, what kind of battery you have, and what kind of work you're doing, you know roughly how long that battery is going to last. And when that battery dies, you don't think much of it other than, I need to go put this on a charger. And maybe you've got a different battery you can pick up, or maybe you need to go do something else for an hour so that that thing can charge up. But you understand that's just a part of the tool. That's just a process of it. It's you don't call Milwaukee and say your drill doesn't work. It was made to be like that. Do you realize there comes a point in which your battery is drained, and that is not a character flaw, or that is not a manufacturer's defect? In fact, it's exactly how God wired you and exactly how He built you. Now I work in roofing. I don't get up on ladders a whole lot anymore, thank you, Jesus. But I've spent a lot of time doing it. And I will confess to you, there's been more than once that I've been up on top of a 28-foot ladder working on something, and that last screw is almost driven, and the battery dies, and there's none others in my pouch. And I've tried to do the Anybody else been there? Right? Like, maybe I can get just a little more out of it. And all of us have times where we've got to make a bit of a sprint. Yesterday, I was up earlier than I usually am, and I was up later than I usually am, and I just knew yesterday was going to be a long, long day, right? Hey, that happens. That's a fairly normal part of life. That's that last quarter of an inch that I need to get that screw to go ahead and tweak in. But brother, if you're trying to put a whole barn together doing that, you are going to be wore out and tired and frustrated and no fun to be around. Right? Sometimes working longer, working harder isn't getting you more. I got to hasten on. I'm talking about being busy, and I got to get busy here. I'm spending a little more time than I want to on this because I want to get you back to some other things here in just a moment. I'll point out quickly though that we think we're good multitaskers. There's a problem with multitasking, and the problem is it doesn't exist. Now, one of my kids saw my notes a week or two ago, and this became a heated discussion at the dinner table. I imagine some of you won't agree with me either, and that's why I pulled a UC Berkeley doctorate for a quote so that smarter people than me could weigh in. We feel the need to get more done by trying to do multiple things at once, and everybody thinks that they're pretty decent at multitasking, but the problem is multitasking really doesn't exist. I believe the quote's in your notes, that it's a myth. In reality, it's rapidly switching from one task to another and then back again. And every time that you make that switch, you actually pay a tax, so to speak, on your time and your energy, because your brain is very quickly moving from this to this and this back to that. And we think, well, if I work on 3 or 4 things at once, I can really get a lot done. And if we could go to the slow motion, like the instant replay on the football game today, and we could see just what is happening, what we would recognize is I worked here for just a little bit, and then there is time taken as I turn and get my attention and focus over here and do this. And we think we're really getting it done by all this multitasking, and the reality is we're not doing what we think we want to do. Busy is not the most efficient way. I want to suggest to you there's a lot of missed opportunities when we're hurrying and we're busy. Hurry and busy is causing you to miss out. Think about how many times Jesus ministered along the way. If he was taking the bullet train from Nazareth to Galilee, he can't stop when somebody's got a need. He can't minister as he's going. It doesn't happen if he's driving 10 over the speed limit and steering with his knee while he's eating fast food so that he can hurry and be the savior to the next guy. I put that in there not because I think Jesus did it, because I want to needle you because I know you do it. Because I've done it. Our hurry and our anxiety sometimes cause us to miss important opportunities in any number of ways. The temptation to take on one more project or add one more small task to my list draws me into this trap of pleasing people, wanting to feel like the hero, and really missing the opportunity to stay focused on what really matters. You miss an opportunity for things like think time. Now, if you're a hard charge and get it done person, it's hard to stop for that. If you don't have any think time, you don't have any new ideas, it's a missed opportunity. You know why a lot of people have their best ideas in the shower? I heard somebody say it. It's one of the few times your mind has been allowed a break and you've actually stopped, because your hands have the muscle memory to wash your hair on autopilot, lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse. It's a vicious cycle. You just keep going again. But you can do that. You're not thinking about what's going on there. And so your mind finally has a chance to wander a little bit, or finally has a chance to relax a little bit. And it's indeed why many people have some great ideas in the shower. Because you were too focused on get it done. I got to hurry here. I got to go there. I got this next appointment. Anywhere else, and your brain doesn't have a chance there. If I spend all my time with my head down doing it, I don't look up to see that there's a more efficient way, I'm really not helping myself. It's like finding yourself so busy fighting alligators that there isn't any time to drain the swamp. But if I can figure out how to pull the plug on that swamp, the alligators don't want to be there anymore, do they? And so I've got to find this better way. I don't come to you as the expert at this. I've come to you as the guy who's wallowed around in it a long time, and I'm just kind of starting to see the light in some of this. But I preach better sermons when I'm less busy. I can think bigger ideas when I'm less busy. I'm a better husband and a better dad when I'm less busy. Why? Because my brain has no space for big, important ideas when I'm in execute mode all day. Reserving no time for thinking and resting is a missed opportunity. It's not just something that would be nice or something that others ought to do. It's reality. It's how you were designed and built, and it indeed is a better way than busy. Busy hinders relationships. I knew this was a problem a few years back when I started realizing way too many of the saints in my church start their conversations with me something like, hey, I know you're busy, but... And it takes me a while to catch on to things, and so it happened several times before I started to understand what was going on and recognize they meant nothing of it. They were trying to be kind to me. They were trying to honor my time. But these are the people that I want to lead. These are not the people that I want to think, hey, I'm too busy. Just catch me on the run if you can. Whether they're literally saying it to you or not, I wonder how many of the important people in your life are thinking, hey, I know you're busy, but. Is that what I want my wife to constantly be in the mindset of? Is that what you want your children or your grandchildren to continually be thinking like, I know you're busy, but. If I'm casting off that idea, then I'm not right. I'm not where I need to be. I'm losing something in the exchange. There's a better way than that. We really do need margin in our life. We tend to think that the more things that we can cram into our lives, the better. Look at your book there, not necessarily the specific sentences right now, but just look at the words on the page. We use this word margin. You know what margin is if you use Word or Google Sheets or anything like that in a computer. You recognize that you might want a 1-inch margin along the sides. You might want a 3/4 inch margin. You can see the margin around the text in this. Imagine if this text were written all the way from one edge of the page to the other, all the way from the left to the right, all the way from the top to the bottom. I'd be able to fit more words on the page, wouldn't I? See how smart I would be? Because that's more efficient. I could use less paper, get more done. And it'd be harder for you to read, harder for you to understand, harder for you to comprehend. Margin is not just necessary on a paper. Margin is necessary in your life. We tend to think, there's a little bit of white space, let me fill it up with junk. Right? But if you get a little bit of that white space around some of the things you do, everything else will get more clear. Everything else will be easier to handle. Everything else will be more legible. And because of that, it'll be more effective. We need to quit with efficient sometimes and head toward what is effective. And we need margin. The most efficient use of the page is not to use all of the page. While it seems counterintuitive, it certainly is accurate. In 3 points or 3 words, I would say that the practical detox from busy is centered on identity, priority, and boundary. Identity, priority, and boundary. Now, prioritizing it and enforcing boundaries around it will feel like the most practical because it's concrete. It's something I can actively do. And as a rule, us guys will lean toward something I can actively, physically do every time over something else that's a little bit more out in the ether or that kind of thing. But this idea of identity it's a mindset. It's some work within your own head. It's some soul searching. Quite honestly, it needs to probably involve some prayer and asking God to help search and direct. But as part of our identity, we've got to quit identifying with busy. When you got here yesterday, we gave you a name tag. You wrote your name on it. Part of that is we wanted people to be able to help recognize who you are. Quite honestly, a large part of that is one color was for one dinner choice, and one color of the perimeter of the name tag was for a different choice. But if we were being honest and not using our names, but we're describing ourselves, many would probably write, "Hello, my name is Busy." We greet one another like that. "Hey, bro, how you doing? You staying busy?" "Hey, man, how are you?" Busy." We wear busy around like it's a badge. If we're quite honest, that we take some refuge in some pride in being busy. I'm so busy. If we're going to break busy, we got to stop identifying with being busy. We've got to get away from it. Certainly, yeah, busy is better than lazy. Right? If you're lazy, like your session is next week, I'm sorry, I don't have much for you today. Sure, busy is better than lazy, but Jesus' goal was not to be busy. It's to be effective in the areas that God has called you to work. And that's true no matter if you're in church ministry or if you work at the factory or if you have people inside your home that look to you or whatever it is. Your calling is not so much busy. Your call is to be effective in the areas that God has called you to work. I don't want to be a busy parent. I want to be a good parent. I want to be an effective parent. I don't want to be a busy worker. I want to be an effective worker. So we've got to change our mindset. We've got to do some work between our ears to start to understand my identity, who I am, is not busy. And if I'm taking that as a sense of identity, I've got the wrong idea. Do you realize that when you get to heaven, there is no scripture that suggests someone is going to say, "Well done, busy and stressed out servant"? There are no awards given for that when we get there. The goals are good and faithful, the way I read the scriptures, right? Well done, good and faithful servant. You want an identity? I want to make good my identity. I want to make faithful my identity. I want to make servant my identity. Not busy, not stressed out. We got to change our mindset. I want to hustle on to prioritize, but I wanted to tell you this. I wish I had a lot of time to spend on this. Part of detoxing from "this is my identity to be busy" is this. We as men have to quit putting expectations on ourselves that God never put on us. I spent a long time telling God how wore out and stressed out I was over all of the things that He's given me to do. And then finally, God started helping me see that He didn't give me all of these things to do. Much of them I gave to myself, and I demanded of myself. And no one else cared, quite honestly, if it was done the way I did it, or with the quality and perfectionism with which I did it. And I thought I was doing it because everybody needed me to, and certainly because God needed me to. And I realized I was doing it because my pride needed me to. And I needed you to think of how good I was and how busy I was and how efficient I was. And the reality is we put a lot of stuff on ourselves that God has never put on us. And if we are going to get away from that identity, we're going to have to come to terms with that. All right, let's talk about priorities. If you're not going to be busy with 1,000 things, it means that some things are going to have to be high priority, and some things are going to have to just simply not get done, or maybe get done by somebody else. It's just a fact. I can't do everything I've ever... Remember being like in the second grade and you were going to be an astronaut and a Major League Baseball player and a firefighter? Well, there came a day in your life that you had to pick one of those. And so we don't have astronaut / Major League Baseball players / firefighters in here. We have some of you who are astronauts and some of you who are Major League Baseball players. Some of us who would be if God hadn't called us to the ministry. Something's going to have to be priority in your life, and that means others are going to be not a priority in your life. That's going to be one of the practical ways that we break free from some of this busy and overwhelm and stress, is that we've got to prioritize what really matters. Let me suggest 5 priorities for your week. Priority 1, this seems like starting backwards. It's not. Rest time. When are you going to have some downtime? I believe you need 1 full day off every week. If you cannot get there just yet, I believe that you ought to start somewhere. You say, oh, my schedule doesn't allow. I can understand that. You can't necessarily, if you're going 100 miles an hour, you're going to hurt yourself if you back it off to 0 by running into a wall, right? So if you're running at 100, we're going to have to get her down to 90 and then 80 and then 70 maybe. So maybe for you it's starting out with a half a day or a few hours or whatever it might be, but making priority out of rest time where I've got a little bit of downtime. Priority 2, it's not quite the same, although it goes along with. I would suggest making a priority out of what I'm calling think time. This is the one I'm working on right now. Scheduled think time. It seems so counterproductive because there are a lot of things to do. Sitting and thinking seems like a lazy man's game in light of that. It is not. I'm working on it. Start where you can. Schedule 20 minutes if you can. I'm just going to sit and think. Could be about anything. But if we're talking about business, let me just sit and think about what is happening for the next week. One version of this for me is I take about 30 minutes on Sunday evening and I review last week and I plan this week. And it's not just all levitating on a cloud or anything like that. I've got a notebook. I've got a planner in front of me. I'm looking at what happened. I'm making notes. I'm making plans. I take about 30 minutes to do that. And I can assure you that 30-minute investment easily gives me a few hours in my week simply because now I've been strategic and thoughtful. You ever work on a project at home and somehow you made 4 trips to Home Depot in one day? I've started to meddle now, haven't I? Now, some things may not be able to be seen ahead of time. But what if I could have had it all figured out to begin with and would have made 1 trip to Home Depot, right? You see where think time can come in? A little bit of planning, a little bit of strategy can help me in this. And then those I would suggest as 2 priorities for you, and then the other 3 priorities for your week. Numbers 3, 4, and 5, I would suggest. What are the 3 things that you want to focus on for the week that will really move the needle? I've taken this into practice for a good while now through some business coaching initially is where some of this came from for me that I had. but establishing what are the 3 big things that I really want to do to move the needle this week. Because sometimes we can get all busy arranging the deck chairs on the Titanic when there's a boat that's about to go under the ocean, right? And so it doesn't matter if I do all the stuff if I don't get the big thing. And so being able to prioritize, hey, what am I going to do that's really going to matter this week? When I say matter, that doesn't have to be some kind of earth-changing, I'm going to cure cancer this week. But it's making priorities out of what's important to you. That might be something in your kid's life. That might be something on the job. That might be something within the church. It probably varies for you from week to week. But pick out 3 things and say, this is what I really want to focus on. And if I get these 3 things done, it'll have been a good week. And if I get some other stuff done too, that'll be all right. But these are the ones I really want to make happen, even if the world falls apart on me. All right, so we talked about identity. We talked about priorities. And then here's the final one, is setting boundaries around your identity and priorities. It doesn't matter at all if you schedule 20 minutes of think time. If you're going to respond to the ding of a text message 3 times within that 20 minutes, you didn't have any think time there. I've got to set some boundaries and say, this is what's important right now. Everything else is going to have to wait. I've had to start learning that I can put my phone on silent, put it on the charger in the other room, and spend a few hours in the evening with my family. And as you can see, the world has not stopped turning yet. It was tentative for a while, I'll admit. We got to put some boundaries into place to say, we've made this a priority, and now something else can't just blow through my priorities because somebody else had an emergency. Now, of course, there's extremes. There's times that something else has to give. But as a rule, I've got to set that boundary. I've got to protect those priorities, protect that identity. It might mean making other requests wait or not get done at all because you're busy with high priority work. I started to figure out that if I can sit at my desk and have a project that I'm going to set aside 2 or 3 hours and work on and close my door and get rid of the phones and all that and just isolate myself, your mileage will vary. You may not be built like this. I figured out I am. While I've been hurrying around everywhere in my life trying to get 5,000 things done, if I'll close myself off for 3 hours, it's amazing how I can feel like I got about 6 hours worth of work done. That's starting to feel like a superpower. I've started to build around that. I've got days in my schedule the next month or 2 where I now just get out of town for a whole day at a time so I can just work unbothered on stuff, being very, very focused. I don't have 50 things on my desk. I go somewhere else so that all I've got is a laptop. And it's amazing how 4 hours looks like a day and a half's worth of work, and it projects what I'm doing for the next month. It's amazing. I'm starting to figure out that maybe busy is not the best way to get things done. But we've got to put boundaries around this. I've got to put boundaries around my identity. That means doing some important work between my ears. Not only do I have to stop bragging on how busy I am, I've got to refuse to identify with that. I've chosen to identify instead one of the things that God really did for me in all of this as I was trying to come out of this and so on, is God gave me fresh vision of what the New Testament says multiple times, that my identity is I am the Son of God. I've started trying to just rehearse that. I'm looking for time and so on. I can't go down all that path. I wish I could. God help me to understand my identity, my role is I'm the Son of God. When good things happen for me now, I go, yeah, I'm the Son of God. When storms start to come against me and bad things start to happen, I go, that's tough, but I guess it'll work out because I'm the Son of God. I've started trying to wear it like a badge. I've considered just printing a t-shirt. I don't know if that would feel arrogant to everybody else. Kind of don't care anymore. Because I'm the Son of God. Men's ministries, that might be the next shirt we print. Because the cool thing is, I don't just get to walk around saying, I am the Son of God. Because the reality is you are the Son of God. And if we're the Son of God, that's our identity. And if I'm going to do that, I've got to put that boundary in place. It says, I'm the Son of God. I'm not tied to busy. I'm not tied to hustle. I'm not tied to hurry. I'm tied to doing the work God has called me to do. My lot in life is not to be wore out or anxious or run over or scattered or overwhelmed with busy. My lot in life is to be the Son of God. And there really is enough time to do the things that really do matter and to spend the needed time to do them well. The abundant life that Christ calls us to as sons of God means there is a better way than busy. And if we'll do the work on our identity, on our priorities, and on our boundaries, we will be well underway to realizing that truth.
Thank you for listening. For more information, resources, and upcoming events, please visit IllinoisMen'sMinistries.com.